I wasn't always a man with time to tell stories. For over 4 decades, I practiced medicine in some of the most advanced hospitals in the United States. I saw hundreds, no, thousands of men walk through my office. Some came in for simple checkups, others didn't walk out. What haunted me most were not the patients who were old or terminal. It was the ones in their 40s, in their 30s, sometimes even younger, healthy-looking, fit, on the outside. But one morning, they'd feel a tightness in their chest. Or they'd find themselves unusually tired, foggy, depressed, weak in ways they couldn't explain. And by the time we discovered what was wrong, it was often too late. Heart attacks, infertility, diabetes, depression, cancer. I remember one man in particular. He was 38, a father of 2. Laughed a lot, played baseball on weekends, ate what he thought was a decent diet. He came to see me after he fainted at the gym. Just fatigue, he said. We ran some tests. What we found was shocking. Early-stage prostate cancer, borderline type 2 diabetes, and dangerously high LDL cholesterol. I looked him in the eyes and asked, "When was the last time you thought about what you put into your body?" He shrugged and laughed. I eat fast, doc. I got kids, a job, a life. That was 10 years ago. He didn't make it to his 40th birthday. Let me ask you this. How many of you watching this feel invincible? You wake up every morning thinking your body will keep going forever. That your youth is a shield, that chronic disease is something that happens to other people. Not to you, but here's the truth no one wants to admit. Men die younger not just because of genetics or stress or environment, but because of choices. Daily, unconscious, habitual choices that we think don't matter. But they do, and it all starts with the food we eat. What if I told you that just one simple addition to your daily meals, one ingredient, could protect your heart, support your hormones, shield your mind, and even extend your life? Would you believe me if I told you that this ingredient isn't a drug, isn't expensive, and has been in your kitchen this whole time? It's olive oil. That's right, extra virgin olive oil, golden, cold-pressed, unfiltered, pure. You see, after I retired, I dove deep into nutritional science. I had witnessed many men die too early to just walk away quietly. I began researching what was keeping Mediterranean men alive longer, staying fertile, sexually active, mentally sharp, and emotionally balanced well into their 60s, 70s, even 80s. The answer kept coming back to one source: olive oil. Not in isolation, but as a foundation, a core element of daily life that helped balance everything else. It wasn't just about fat. It was about inflammation, about cellular health, about how one spoonful a day could unlock powerful biological changes. Science now confirms this. From hormone regulation to cardiovascular protection, from improving insulin sensitivity to reducing cancer risk, the compounds found in high-quality olive oil are nothing short of extraordinary. But you won't hear this from the fast food industry or the pharmaceutical world. They'd rather you stay dependent, sick, numb, addicted to pills and processed meals. So here I am, a retired doctor, not selling you anything. Just a man with stories and a warning: the enemy isn't always outside. Sometimes it's the silence in your kitchen, the oil you don't use, the nutrition you skip because it doesn't taste exciting. But what if that habit ... is the one thing shortening your life? I've made it my mission to teach men like you the truth, because no one else will. And if you want to hear the rest of this truth, all I ask is that you support this journey. Subscribe to the channel, share this message. Give this work a reason to exist. That's how I'll know you're listening, that this matters. Now, before we move into the science, the real evidence behind why olive oil might be the most overlooked lifesaver for men, I want to leave you with something to think about. Reflection question for you: if you had to make a decision today that could impact your health 10 years from now, which would you choose? A. Keep eating the way you are and hope for the best. B. Make one small daily change, like adding olive oil, and take control of your health. Comment below. Or B. I read every one. And your answer might just inspire the next man to live longer. I remember the first time a patient looked me in the eyes and said, "Doc, I don't feel like a man anymore." He wasn't old. Barely 40, he was a former athlete, married, to kids. From the outside, You wouldn't guess there was anything wrong. But inside, he was falling apart quietly, invisibly, and painfully. It wasn't just about performance in the bedroom, though that was part of it, it was something deeper. He said he felt disconnected from his energy, his drive, even his sense of identity. I wake up tired, I don't feel sharp, I get irritable for no reason, he told me. And then, in a whisper, he said, and I'm worried. I don't know what's happening to me. Double quotes. I've heard versions of this story more times than I can count. What most men don't realize until they're in the middle of the decline is that masculinity, biologically speaking, is fragile. Testosterone levels, sperm quality, and sexual vitality are all incredibly sensitive to lifestyle factors: diet, stress, sleep, environmental toxins. But diet, what we feed our bodies every day, is the most powerful lever of all. And yet, we treat food like filler, like something to grab on the go. Something to survive on, not thrive on. If there's one message I wish every man could hear, it's this: masculine vitality is not guaranteed. It must be protected, nourished, and rebuilt daily. And one of the most overlooked allies in that process is something as humble as olive oil. Now, I'm not talking about the cheap, mass-produced stuff you find in plastic bottles on dusty supermarket shelves. I'm talking about real, extra virgin olive oil, rich, cold-pressed, packed with life-giving compounds that science is only beginning to understand. Let me tell you what we now know. Inside high-quality olive oil are antioxidants like hydroxytyrosol, which help neutralize something called oxidative stress. Think of oxidative stress as internal rust. It eats away at your cells, damages your DNA, and directly harms sperm quality. Sperm are especially vulnerable because they carry half of your genetic blueprint, but no defense system. Without enough antioxidants in your diet, your sperm age faster, die off sooner, and become less effective. This isn't speculation, it's science. A 2020 study in Frontiers in Nutrition found that men who consumed higher levels of antioxidant-rich olive oil showed measurable improvements in sperm DNA integrity. That's not just about fertility, that's about the future. About giving your children the best possible genetic start in life, but it doesn't stop there. Olive oil is rich in monounsaturated fatty acids, especially omega-9s. These fats play a critical role in the flexibility of cell membranes, including those of sperm cells. More flexible membranes mean better motility. Your sperm can swim stronger, faster, and survive longer. That's essential not only for conception, but for overall hormonal balance and male reproductive health. Then there's vitamin E, a powerful, fat-soluble nutrient also found in olive oil. It supports something called sperm morphology. In layman's terms, that's the size and shape of your sperm. It may seem like a small detail, but when it comes to fertilization, morphology can mean the difference between success and failure. Misshapen sperm often can't penetrate an egg, no matter how many are produced. A recent 2023 study published in Addiction and Health confirmed that vitamin E from natural sources, like olive oil, significantly improved morphology scores in men with previous fertility challenges. And yet, we rarely talk about this. In medical school, we spent hundreds of hours learning how to treat disease, but almost none learning how to protect vitality, how to sustain that fire in a man's system that defines so much of who he is. After I retired, I began to reflect deeply on this oversight. I thought about all the younger men I had treated, men who looked healthy but whose hormones were crashing, whose sperm counts were declining, whose partners were quietly carrying the emotional burden of infertility and frustration. Men who felt ashamed but had no one to talk to. If you're one of them, hear this clearly: you are not broken. You are simply unprotected. Our modern lifestyle is hostile to male biology. Plastics, processed foods, chronic stress, low movement, it all adds up. But change doesn't have to start with medication. It can begin with something as elemental as what you put on your salad. I've seen men turn their health around not by swallowing 10 pills a day, but by taking their nutrition seriously. By respecting their body as a system, not a machine. By embracing ancient, proven wisdom like the kind found in Mediterranean traditions that center olive oil in almost every meal. This isn't about trends. This is about biology. You want to feel more like a man again, stronger, clearer, more grounded in your body, your energy, your identity. Then you have to start feeding your masculinity, supporting your testosterone, defending your fertility before it fades into memory. You don't have to overhaul your life overnight, you just have to begin. So next time you stand in your kitchen, facing that bland pile of greens, I want you to reach for a bottle of real olive oil. Pour it with intention. Know that what you're doing isn't small. It's an act of resistance, a way of reclaiming your future, a way of telling your biology, I choose to protect what makes me a man. Because no one else will do it for you, and that's why I'm here, not just to remind you, but to empower you. Your vitality isn't a mystery, it's a message your body is constantly trying to send. You just have to listen and respond. That's what I've learned in a lifetime of medicine, and now I pass it on to you. I've spent a lifetime watching men slowly lose their edge without ever realizing why. They come into the clinic with a bit of extra weight, some stubborn fatigue, and a general sense that they're not quite who they used to be. They brush it off, just getting older, they say. It's stress, kids, work, but behind that casual shrug is a silent decline, one that begins in the blood, spreads through the organs, and if ignored long enough, can take everything from them. You see, most men don't feel the first signs of metabolic breakdown. It's not a scream, it's a whisper. Blood sugar creeping up, insulin losing its sensitivity, silent inflammation in the blood vessels, triglycerides thickening like oil in cold pipes. The liver, pancreas, and heart organs built to work with precision start to labor like old machines long overdue for maintenance. But here's the cruel irony, the body gives signals. Gentle ones, a bit of belly fat that wasn't there last year, mental fog in the afternoon, energy crash after lunch. These are not just signs of aging, they're flags, red ones. Warnings of insulin resistance setting in, of prediabetes forming quietly in the background, of the heart working harder than it should to push blood through arteries that are slowly stiffening. In my decades of practice, I've seen countless men ignore these warnings until the day came when they couldn't anymore, a heart attack, a diabetes diagnosis, a silent stroke that robbed them of speech or balance. And when they'd come back to see me, sitting across from me now humbled and afraid, they'd always ask the same question, is there anything I could have done earlier? Yes, there was, and in fact, there still is. What I wish more men knew is that metabolic health isn't determined by luck or even just genetics. It's determined by what you feed your system every single day. And one of the simplest, most powerful dietary shifts a man can make, one backed by hard science, is replacing inflammatory fats with olive oil. Now, that may not sound revolutionary, but let me explain why it is. Olive oil is rich in monounsaturated fats, especially oleic acid. These fats do something remarkable in the body. They help restore insulin sensitivity. This means your cells are more willing to listen when insulin tells them to absorb glucose from the bloodstream. Without this sensitivity, sugar stays in your blood too long, damaging arteries and nerves. With it, your metabolism runs smoothly, your energy is stable, and your organs stay protected. A major study published in Nutrition, Metabolism and Cardiovascular Diseases in 2021 confirmed this. Men who consumed diets high in monounsaturated fats, particularly from olive oil, had significantly better insulin responses and reduced post-meal blood sugar spikes. That means less stress on your pancreas, less risk of developing type 2 diabetes, and a body that works with itself, not against itself. But it's not just the fat content that makes olive oil special. It's the polyphenols, powerful plant compounds that most processed oils simply don't have. These polyphenols are natural anti-inflammatories. They reduce oxidative stress, one of the primary causes of organ damage in metabolic disorders. A 2017 study in Clinical Nutrition found that these polyphenols could lower blood sugar levels after meals and reduce markers of inflammation, something no synthetic supplement has managed to replicate as effectively. Let's talk about the heart, because while blood sugar problems tend to stay quiet for years, heart issues are rarely so polite. I lost my younger brother to a sudden heart attack when he was 49. No symptoms, no prior warnings, just a phone call one morning that split my life in two. He was successful, driven, and thought he was doing everything right. But his diet was heavy in processed oils, fried foods, and red meats. Like many men, he didn't think twice about it until it was too late. Since then, I've dedicated much of my retirement to understanding what truly protects the heart. And the answer, again and again, has pointed to olive oil. A 2020 publication from the Journal of the American College of Cardiology found that participants who followed a Mediterranean-style diet rich in olive oil had a 31% lower risk of major cardiovascular events, heart attacks, strokes, and sudden cardiac death. That's not a small number, that's a life-changing difference. A second chance for thousands of men who might otherwise leave behind families far too soon. How does it work? Olive oil not only improves your cholesterol profile, lowering the bad LDL and raising the good HDL, but also strengthens your blood vessels, reduces arterial stiffness, and lowers inflammation at a cellular level. One compound in particular, oleocanthal, mimics the anti-inflammatory effects of ibuprofen without the side effects. It calms the silent fires that burn through your circulatory system, damaging your heart over time, and let's not forget the prostate. I've seen it time and time again, men reaching their 50s, beginning to experience changes they don't talk about. Frequent urination, discomfort, anxiety about cancer. The prostate is often overlooked until it becomes a problem, and by then, treatments are invasive, emotional, and often life-altering. But olive oil, through its anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects, has shown promise in protecting the prostate as well. A 2017 study in the Journal of Cancer Therapy reported that men with higher intake of olive oil had a lower risk of prostate cancer again, thanks to its ability to combat inflammation and oxidative damage at the cellular level. All of this, from blood sugar balance to heart protection to prostate health, stems from one simple, consistent act: nourishing your body with what it was designed to process. I'm not claiming olive oil is a cure, it's not a magic potion. But it is a daily defense, a shield you can raise every time you eat. A choice you can make that tells your body, I care enough to protect you. As a doctor, I've written to many prescriptions for statins, blood pressure meds, and insulin injections. And while those drugs can save lives, I've always believed prevention is better than intervention. Olive oil represents a return to that philosophy, to common sense. To the idea that we don't need to wait for disease to act, we can choose to act now, with intention, with wisdom, and with hope. That's what I've learned, not just from the research, but from the men I've walked alongside in both health and sickness. The ones who waited too long, and the few who didn't. Now I offer it to you. Not as advice, but as experience, from one man to another. From a doctor who's seen too much to stay silent. What you put on your plate today echoes through your organs tomorrow. Choose wisely, choose early, choose olive oil. I used to believe that the most dangerous diseases were the ones you could see on a scan: tumors, blockages, ruptures. But as the years passed and my patients aged with me, I realized something far more subtle, far more insidious, was destroying lives from the inside out. It wasn't a virus or a cancer, it was despair, and it was everywhere. Men came into my office not bleeding, not limping, not coughing. They came in numb, disconnected. Some described it as a fog they couldn't shake. Others said they felt nothing at all. They weren't in pain, but they weren't alive either. Their wives would say they'd changed, distant, irritable, withdrawn. Their kids didn't understand why Dad sat in silence at the dinner table. And most tragically, they themselves didn't know why they felt broken. They just did. You see, we've built a culture where men are taught to suppress, to endure, to power through. We tell boys not to cry and grown men not to feel. But what happens when those emotions don't go away? What happens when the pressure builds and there's no valve, no outlet, no understanding? Mental and emotional health in men is not just about psychology. It's about biology, too, about neurochemistry, inflammation, and diet. And after decades in medicine, I came to see a pattern that's rarely talked about in clinics or textbooks. What you feed your body deeply affects your mind. Let me be clear, depression is real, anxiety is real, cognitive decline is real, and while therapy and medication can be powerful tools, There is a foundational truth we overlook too often. Your brain is an organ, just like your heart or liver, and it needs to be nourished. When I retired and finally had the time to revisit the science without the rush of clinical schedules, I dove deep into the emerging research around nutrition and brain health. And one ingredient kept showing up again and again: olive oil. Now, I understand how odd that might sound. How could something as simple as olive oil affect your mood, your memory, your resilience? But let me take you beneath the surface. Your brain is composed largely of fat. Its cells communicate through membranes that require flexibility and integrity to transmit signals. Without the right kinds of fats, that communication begins to break down. Monounsaturated fats, the primary fat found in olive oil, are essential for maintaining the health of those cell membranes. They help keep the pathways between neurons smooth and efficient, which is critical for focus, clarity, and emotional stability. Beyond fats, olive oil is rich in polyphenols, natural plant compounds with remarkable antioxidant properties. Inflammation in the brain, though invisible, is one of the driving forces behind mood disorders and cognitive decline. It disrupts neurotransmitter function, impairs memory, and amplifies anxiety. Polyphenols actively reduce this inflammation, essentially quieting the chemical storms inside your head. A 2020 study published in Nutrients showed that diets high in monounsaturated fats were associated with significantly lower rates of depression. Another review in Nutrition Reviews 2021 linked the polyphenols in olive oil to reduced inflammation in brain tissue and improved regulation of dopamine and serotonin, the very chemicals responsible for mood and motivation. But what struck me most wasn't just the science, it was the stories. In countries bordering the Mediterranean, where olive oil isn't a trend but a tradition, rates of depression and neurodegenerative diseases are measurably lower. People eat together, talk more, move daily, and cook with ingredients that nourish both body and soul. Olive oil is part of nearly every meal, not as a health hack, but as a way of life. In the West, we've replaced those practices with speed, screens, and shortcuts. We eat alone, we scroll endlessly, we microwave instead of cook. And men, in particular, are paying the price in silence. I remember one patient in his late 50s, a former engineer, sharp as a tack in his younger years. He came to me complaining of memory lapses and growing apathy. He wasn't sad in the conventional sense, just flat. "Doc, I used to care about things," he said. "Now I don't. It's like someone turned the volume down inside me." We ran the tests. No early Alzheimer's, no stroke. Just elevated inflammation markers, borderline metabolic syndrome, and a diet built around packaged food and convenience. We made one major change. We rebuilt his meals around real, whole foods, and every day included a serving of extra virgin olive oil. It wasn't dramatic. It was daily, consistent, simple. 6 months later, he didn't just remember better, he felt better. His eyes lit up when he spoke. His wife said he laughed again. And for the first time in years, he began painting again, a hobby he hadn't touched in over a decade. Now, was that just the olive oil? Of course not. But was it the foundation that allowed his mind to heal? Without a doubt. We often speak of mental health as if it lives in a separate realm from physical health. But in truth, your mind is built from the food you eat. Your emotions are shaped by hormones and neurotransmitters, which are made from the nutrients you consume. Your resilience, that spark that helps you bounce back from stress, depends on whether your brain is inflamed or nourished. I've spent years watching men lose themselves, not from dramatic events, but from slow starvation of the self. They stop feeding their bodies what they need, and the mind begins to dim. I don't want that for you. If you're listening to this and something inside you feels off, if you're tired of feeling numb, tired of surviving instead of living, then hear me clearly. Healing isn't always loud. It's not always about breakthroughs or diagnoses. Sometimes, it's a quiet return to what your body has been asking for all along. So pour the olive oil, not just on your food, but into your life. Into your rituals, into your story. You are not broken, you are undernourished. And you deserve to feel whole again? When I first began practicing medicine, nutrition was often treated like an afterthought. We focused on diseases, medications, and procedures, the hard science, food was something we left to dietitians or assumed people would figure out on their own. But now, after over 4 decades in practice and just as many years watching lives slowly unravel from preventable causes, I can tell you this with unwavering certainty. The details of how we nourish ourselves matter deeply. And sometimes, the smallest changes carry the greatest weight. Let's talk about olive oil, not as a trend or a health buzzword, but as a tool. A tool for healing, for protecting, and yes, even for transforming the trajectory of a man's health over decades. But like any tool, its power lies in how it's used. And too often, even those with the best intentions get it wrong. Olive oil isn't just better than butter. It's not simply a healthier fat, it's a therapeutic food, a dense source of bioactive compounds, antioxidants, and monounsaturated fats that, when used properly, can shift internal chemistry in measurable ways. But if misused, overheated, or drowned in, it can lose that power, or worse, become another excess in a culture already addicted to imbalance. When I retired, I traveled through the Mediterranean to see, firsthand, how people used olive oil in their daily lives. I wanted to understand not just the what, but the how. In Crete, I watched an 82-year-old man prepare lunch with hands that had chopped vegetables the same way every day for 60 years. He didn't measure, he didn't count calories. He simply drizzled olive oil over tomatoes, beans, and whole grain bread as if it was second nature, not a health practice, but an expression of love. That, I realized, was the secret: consistency, simplicity, and respect. In my experience, the optimal amount for most adult men is 1–2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil per day. That's about 15 to 30 milliliters. Not too much to overwhelm your caloric needs, but enough to deliver the polyphenols and monounsaturated fats that do the real work inside your body. The key word here is daily. The effects of olive oil are not magic, they are cumulative. Like brushing your teeth or sleeping well, the benefits appear not in a single day, but across months and years of repetition. But dosage is only part of the picture. The other is method, how you integrate it into your life. The first principle I teach is this: respect the oil. Extra virgin olive oil is fragile, in the best sense. It contains delicate compounds, oleocanthal, oleuropein, hydroxytyrosol, that degrade under high heat. This means if you're using it to fry at high temperatures, you're not just losing the benefit, you're damaging the oil. I've seen many well-meaning patients pour expensive olive oil into sizzling hot pans and destroy its value in seconds. Instead, use olive oil in its raw or gently heated form. Drizzle it over salads, whole grains, steamed vegetables, roasted root vegetables after they've cooled slightly. Use it as a dip for whole grain breads, combined with herbs or lemon. You can salt with it, but keep the flame low to medium. Let the oil remain golden, not smoking. That's the line between nourishment and destruction. There's also a psychological piece here, and I'll speak frankly. Men often treat food as fuel. Something to get through, not to engage with. But when I look at the longest living populations, the healthiest men well into their 80s and 90s, they don't just eat olive oil, they experience it, they sit, they slow down, they taste. This is not sentimental, this is biochemical. When you slow down, chew, and savor, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest state that improves nutrient absorption, lowers cortisol, and even supports hormone balance. Olive oil becomes more than food. It becomes ritual, and then there's quality. Not all olive oil is created equal. Many of the mass-produced bottles you see on store shelves are blends, often cut with lower quality oils, sometimes oxidized before they even reach your kitchen. Look for extra virgin, cold-pressed olive oil, ideally in a dark glass bottle. Check for harvest dates, buy in smaller amounts, and use it within a few months. Store it away from light and heat. Think of it as you would a good wine. Delicate, valuable, worth protecting. I'll also say this: you don't need to reinvent your meals. You don't have to become a chef or follow some rigid meal plan. Start simple. 1 tablespoon in your morning omelette, a drizzle over lunch. A dressing with balsamic vinegar and fresh herbs at dinner. That alone, repeated daily, becomes a form of medicine. A preventive therapy most insurance plans will never cover. Some men ask me, "Doc, what if I already eat healthy? Do I still need olive oil?" My answer is always yes, because olive oil doesn't just replace unhealthy fats. It actively supports the systems that fail first in men: the heart, the brain, the metabolism, the hormones. It's not about fixing something once it's broken. It's about building a foundation so that it never breaks at all. And I'll offer one more thought, one that may surprise you. The act of choosing to use olive oil every day is a form of self-respect. It's a small declaration: I am worth the effort, I am not disposable, my future matters. In a world that teaches men to ignore their needs, to push through discomfort, to carry everyone else's burden in silence, this one act can be revolutionary. As a doctor, I've prescribed every medication under the sun. But in retirement, I've come to believe that the most powerful prescription I ever gave was this: a tablespoon of olive oil every day for the rest of your life. It's not glamorous, it's not trendy, but it works. And it just might be the difference between a life endured and a life fully lived. In the end, all of this comes down to something simple: a choice. Not a flashy, dramatic, overnight transformation, not a complete reinvention of your life. Just a quiet, steady decision made every day to care. To care for your body, your mind, and your future. You see, I've lived long enough and worked long enough as a physician to know how the story plays out when we don't. I've watched strong, capable men deteriorate not from accidents or sudden illness, but from neglect, from the slow erosion of vitality, the kind you don't notice until one day it's no longer there. But I've also seen something else. I've seen men turn their health around, not by taking 100 supplements or living at the gym, but by returning to the basics. Real food, rest, movement, connection, and yes, something as simple as olive oil. That may sound small, but I assure you, it's not. The act of reaching for a bottle of extra virgin olive oil each day, pouring it with intention, and using it to nourish yourself is an act of long-term defiance against disease, stress, and early decline. It is you saying, "I choose to invest in the decades ahead, science backs it up." But so does wisdom. The kind passed down from generations who lived long before lab results and hospital charts, but who understood something modern life often forgets: the daily choices we make shape the man we become. So what's the lesson here? It's not about perfection, it's about presence. When you sit down to eat, be present. When you nourish your body, do it with intention. You don't need to fear illness if you're actively cultivating wellness. That begins not in the hospital, but in the home, in the kitchen, on your plate. And olive oil, in all its quiet power, is one of the simplest, most profound places to start. It's not just a fat, it's a protector, a brain supporter, a hormone balancer, a guardian for your heart, your cells, and your legacy. So today, I ask you to not just watch this and move on. I ask you to act. Buy a quality bottle. Use it daily, build your meals around it, teach your sons about it. Bring it into your habits not as a trend, but as a tradition, one that will serve you for the rest of your life. Because in the end, the biggest difference often comes from the smallest, most consistent decisions. Reflection question: what's one thing you're willing to change starting today to support your long-term health? Add 1 tablespoon of olive oil into your daily meals. Be more intentional with what you eat and how you eat. Please take a moment to leave your answer, or in the comments below. Your voice matters. And someone else reading your comment might be inspired to start their own journey because of you. If you found this video helpful, I kindly ask that you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more valuable health insights. And if you feel moved to support this mission, consider donating, even just a little, to help me keep producing this content. I may be an old man, but I still believe in giving back. Every bit of encouragement, every subscription, every comment, every small donation fuels my drive to share more of what I've learned across a lifetime in medicine. Thank you for watching, thank you for caring, and thank you for choosing to live with intention.